Rev up your engines!
Well, you've seen those tiny little cars, like the smart car, there's ones even smaller, and you think, okay, how do people get in them? Well, there's an electric vehicle that splits itself down the middle to let the passengers inside. This is called IEV motors. Now, the IEVZ is 6 times smaller than normal cars. Has a range of 62 miles on a charge, and a maximum speed of 28 miles an hour. So we're talking about interurban stuff like in Europe. But they also have a plus version called the IEVZ Plus that has 99-mile range. You can go 50 miles an hour. And both versions can be fully charged in 3 hours. The starting price is like $6,400. Well, now that makes sense for interurban cars. Now, even though that one goes 50 miles an hour, I wouldn't be seen dead in one of those things going on a small highway. The speed limit's 55. You're going 50, and these big giant trucks are going by, and you're that tiny thing. No, recharge in 3 hours. Take it home, plug it in, no problem. You go somewhere, you can plug it in, watch a movie, it's recharged. The cool thing is it splits down the middle so people can get in and out. The Messerschmitt designed one that BMW make, those Zetas. They added that the steering wheel, you had to take the steering wheel out, then you get in, you put the steering wheel in, just like a NASCAR, because they were so cramped for space. Well, you can't say I didn't warn you, but a study in England just showed that internal combustion engine vehicles are infinitely more reliable than the electric cars. This was done with a survey of 48,000 people in England that had internal combustion engines and had electric cars, and they compared them. To give you an example, 39% of the electric vehicle owners reported a problem. Only 19% of the gasoline car people had a problem. You might not know, but I know, because I'm in the business. When an electric car breaks, it takes a lot longer to fix it. Sometimes I've seen people with Teslas take months to get their car fixed. There aren't that many places that can fix it. They don't have that many spare parts. They're much more complex to figure out. The problem is, everybody thought, oh, electric cars, they have less moving parts. They're going to be easier to fix, simpler. They're not going to break down. No, that's not what happened. Because they're not building them simple. Take the Tesla. It's an extremely complex machine. Now, they could make them simple. They could be a battery and 2 wires and an electric motor like a kid's toy, right? But they are putting all the computer stuff in the world to make them high-tech. And when they break, good luck fixing it. And then, of course, every year in the United States, over 2.5% of the cars get in an accident. A lot of cars get in wrecks, right? You get one of these electric cars in a wreck, and the wiring starts getting damaged. The main problem with getting in a big wreck and getting your car fixed today with any car is it messes up the electronics. Gasoline cars, too, have a lot of electronics, right? You get in a wreck, wires get crushed, all kinds of damage can happen. Some of these cars have 80 separate computer modules. They get crunched, wires go, they short out. It is a rat's nest trying to figure out what's wrong. Well, when your whole car is electronic, you can make that tenfold to try to figure out what's wrong. So when you get in a wreck, they're also stinkers. And the British found that the least reliable of all the electric vehicles were Tesla that had 39% problems. Interesting enough, the Kia electric car, the Kia e-Niro, only had 6% problems. Much more. The Koreans are doing a lot better job than old Elon is. Of course, they've been building cars for quite some time, too, you know. Mr. Chandler says, is my transmission dying? One of my friends has an Envoy. 2008 with 172,000 kilometers. He never changed the tranny oil. When he engages the gear, there's 1.5 cent delay before the gear gets engaged. It's going out. Should I rebuild or get rid of it? Well, it's your friend's car, so, let him worry about it. Here's what I would advise doing, and sometimes it does work. Take 1 quart of fluid out, and I would put in 1 quart of lube guard, and it can help with that problem. You never know. Have them drive at 250, 300 miles. If it stops, great, it fixes. If not, it's probably time to think about getting rid of the thing. It costs a fortune to rebuild those correctly. GM makes horrible automatic transmissions, and they cost a fortune to rebuild. Plus, I've seen people rebuild them. Something like 33% of those rebuilds don't even work correctly, so you might not even get it fixed right. But sometimes that lube, if it works good otherwise, I've seen that lube guard fix it. There's sometimes a varnish built up in the pump. There's no oil pump inside the transmission to pump the transmission fluid. I've seen that fixed. It's called lube guard. Comes in a red bottle. Take a little bit out, like a pint, and pour that pint in. See what happens. It can help it. Sam says, what about cleaning oxygen sensors? I got a 93 Mitsubishi getting smog testing. I was thinking about cleaning oxygen sensor. Will it make any difference? It doesn't have any codes. Don't waste your time. They don't need cleaning. They're made out of rare earth metals, and they don't wear out. If, let's say, your Mitsubishi burnt a bunch of oil, which they often do, it would clog up with carbon. You couldn't clean it. It'd be built right onto the thing. You just have to buy another sensor. I mean, if you're worried, pull one of the sensors out and look at it. If it's not all carboned up, just put it back on. Spraying some cleaner on it isn't going to do anything. Rare earth minerals and the oxygen sensor measures the residual oxygen in the exhaust, compares it to the outside air, and then adjusts your air-fuel ratio to make it run at a stoichiometric ratio. That's the perfect ratio for making your car run, have the right power, and not pollute. Don't waste your time cleaning it. That's a waste of time. If they're gone, they're gone. And if they aren't, they're perfectly fine. Just leave them alone. Well, GM just recalled 740,000 SUVs because the headlights were too bright. GM fought this tooth and nail and tried to say, oh, no, it's not a problem. Our owners aren't complaining about it. Yeah, their owners aren't complaining about it. The people that in front of their owners having the light shine on their face on the highway were complaining about it. They fought it tooth and nail, but they lost. And now they have to recall 740,000 of them because they're too bright and they can glare in people's faces and cause wrecks. The U.S. safety regulators turned down GM's request that said, nah, it's no big thing. Now, this is 2010 to 2017 GMC terrain. And the hilarious thing is, you can't really believe this stuff until you read it. The spokesman for GM, Dan Flory, says, and I quote him, "We are still finalizing an actual remedy for the affected vehicles." So they don't even know how to fix it. Starting April 23rd, they're going to start sending out notices, but since they don't know how to fix it yet, who knows when they're going to do it. Another one of GM's screw-ups that they tried to hide, then they tried to say it wasn't a problem, just like you remember the ignition switch problem that they had years ago, and they even changed the number of the part to make it look like it was, and they denied it for years, and then finally they got caught with their finger in the pie. Well, they got caught with their finger in the socket for headlights now, and they're going to have to fix it, even though they don't know how yet. But there's a couple old hippies wearing tie-dyed shirts. They got a company called Grease Car Vegetable Fuel Systems, and they're selling conversion kits that you can convert your diesel to run on old vegetable oil and stuff. It's called Grease Car Vegetable Fuel Systems. Some guy's got an old Mercedes, 84 Mercedes 300D turbo diesel that runs on it. His system is cool because what he does is you start your car up with kerosene, engine runs, then your coolant gets hot, cool the engine, right? Well, part of that hot coolant then goes to the fuel filter, and that gets the vegetable oil nice and warm so it burns better. And in the winter, if you know anything about vegetable oil, it congeals and becomes kind of like a solid lump of grease. That keeps it melted so you can use it. If you've ever seen one of these, I had a guy in Houston, that old school bus like that. He'd be driving on the road, and truthfully, his old school bus with a diesel engine smelled like French fries when it went down the road. And these guys are pretty funny. They have a concours de lemons of old cars around. They got a big old lemon and it says, "Welcome to the land of misfit toys." Vehicles that run on vegetable oil. One guy by the name of Aldrin, he even used bacon grease, but of course he had to get it warmed up fast because that's pretty congealed. But once it got into his filter, water from the radiator going in it, it easily melted, and then his car smelled like bacon when he was driving down the road. And now, it's not that expensive with the system. He said he can do a conversion of a diesel car for $1,500, and for $2,000, he can make one for a full-size diesel pickup, so it can run on any kind of vegetable oil, grease from grease traps. Kind of interesting. The guy made a setup that anybody can do it and run it on any kind of oil. And of course, then they burn pretty clean. So what the heck? Who knows? Maybe the future will be we'll be driving around French fry mobiles. Well, Mercedes-Benz and Bosch would certainly do it. They now have an automated valet parking for their vehicles where you can just drive to the parking place and then leave your car and it parks itself. It's called Intelligent Park Pilot. Now, this is already in use in a parking garage in the Stuttgart airport. They had a demo in LA to show people how it works. Now, it has to be installed. That's the thing. Instead of using the car sensor, it's an external where there's all these LiDAR sensors on the route so it can read what's going on. Well, I personally hate valet parking because one guy scratched my wife's Lexus in Austin one time. It really peed me off. I said, I want to park it. No, you can't. And then I get it back 2 days later. There it is, smashed in. I had a heck of a time getting them to pay for it. They were real scumbags. They finally did, but, they fought it all the way. Now, I guess, if you have that automated valet, you can only blame your car. You'd have to sue your car because it ran into something. And of course, there's LiDAR sensors that are placed in the parking. You know there's going to be vandalous kids that are going to move the sensors, turn them one way, and the car's going to run into a wall. I mean, come on now, people. We're driving the cars. We can park them. It's kind of ridiculous. And it'd have to be set up for every single place that people were parked. It's like the people said, we're going to have cars that drive themselves on the road. They're going to have sensors on the road. Yeah, they're going to put in thousands of miles of sensors and upkeep them in the United States. That's going to happen sometime soon, right? It's ridiculous. It would cost so much money. The stuff would break. They wouldn't fix it. They wouldn't maintain it. But here's the Germans again. That makes the cars park themselves. Look at this. I mean, you know, something would happen in their Mercedes and smash into a wall. Then I'll come to lawyers to see who was blamed. Whose fault was it? You know, was it the car? Was it the sensor? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.